It was more of a spiritual journey than anything else. I really wanted to, deepen my connection to nature, and I spent a whole night meditating, looking for some answers to questions I had about nature and about spirituality,
Hmm.
and it all led me to plants, and that was the beginning of my studies. That was probably back in early 80s.
This week, I interviewed Ric Scalzo. Ric began his exploration of herbal and naturopathic medicine in the 1980s. After several years of a medical practice, Ric founded Gaia Herbs in 1987 and grew it to one of the most respected and successful herbal companies in the country. Now, his new adventure, called Kokora, is an herbal products company focused on regenerative organic cultivation with a mission to create the finest herbal remedies that promote health and vitality for all. We discuss the importance of regenerative farming, along with the advantage of eating organic foods, using herbs for helping sleep, combating stress and increasing energy with ashwagandha, and much, much more. Really enjoyed my interview with Ric. I know you will too. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Gryn, and I have Ric Scalzo on. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you on. And we're going to touch all on herbal and naturopathic medicine. I know you've been in that market since like the 80s.
Yeah, I actually started let's see, it was probably in the late 70s, early 80s when I started my journey in education and herbal medicine and diagnostics and the naturopathic medicine. So I've been at it a while. Yeah.
What got you interested in that sort of niche in health and wellness?
It was more of a spiritual journey than anything else. I really wanted to, deepen my connection to nature, and I spent a whole night meditating, looking for some answers to questions I had about nature and about spirituality,
Hmm.
and it all led me to plants, and that was the beginning of my studies. That was probably back in early 80s.
And yeah, I mean that was probably before it's become a little bit more in the mainstream, right? I mean, you were probably one of the pioneers when it comes to like
You,
herbal. Yeah.
it's interesting, Brian. If any of your listeners know, the names Herb Farm and Ed Smith and Gaia and Ric Scalzo, we were the two pioneers back then. We were speaking about, wild crafting herbs, organic herbs, and making tinctures and fluid extracts, and
Hmm.
and really just gaining a, listening audience.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, back in the 80s compared to now, I mean, how much has it changed? I mean, I'm sure there's a
Oh.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah, there's been a lot of change and a lot of evolution, which is good.
sure.
And but one of the things I noticed over the last period of time is the herbal industry has really gone more towards isolation and purification of products, where
Okay.
we now see a lot of what I call phytopharmaceuticals, Brian, where you see turmeric products no longer sold as turmeric, but they're sold as 95% curcumin. And, we're seeing a lot of that these days, and it's kind of disturbing to me in a way because it's disconnecting us from the wisdom of nature.
Mm. Yeah, and there's been obviously a lot more players in the market. What do you say to someone who's looking to, learn or implement herbal medicine, as far as, because I know with supplements, a lot of times it's a bit like the wild, wild west, right? Like there's not a lot of oversight, and finding a company that really does it right is probably obviously most important.
It is. And also, I've always said a herbal product is only as good as the herb from which it's made. So, understanding and knowing who your producers are, your brands are, and knowing where they're sourcing the herbs is really important. We've gone through an evolution where when I started, the concept of organic was fairly new.
Mm,
Everybody was talking about wild crafting herbs at that time. And then organic became the thing. And now in the last couple years, it's about regenerative organic. And so there's been quite an evolution of the supply chain.
Yeah, and you always wonder just in general, like when something's organic, like is it truly organic, right? Like um, you go to like, I don't know, Whole Foods and you buy an organic fruit, you're like, well, how, they say it's organic, but I don't know. I always wonder, there's a little bit of skepticism from that. What's your thoughts around like around that?
Well, it's an interesting question. I've been on the regulatory side of the organic industry, and that means the USDA National Organic Program governs everything that we did when we grew herbs organically. So there are a lot of agencies now that are authorized by the NOP program, the National Organic Program, to go and inspect growers, to inspect their farms, to be sure they're following the organic standards.
Mm,
So that's the world I've lived in, Brian. And the only time I've seen something that's for me questionable is when I visited an organic farm in China,
mm,
and where I questioned their practices, and sure enough, even though they were quote certified organic, they really weren't.
mm. Yeah, and you also wonder that when it comes to like grass fed and pasture raised, it's like, are they really following these guidelines? You would hope so, right? There's this level of trust, but I guess unless you actually visit these places, you don't actually know for sure.
Yeah, and now we're seeing the emergence of regenerative organic, which is, you know, a massive improvement over organic,
Mm.
small things, but having big differences. And that's the world
Maybe,
I'm.
yeah, I was going to say, maybe explain to the audience what regenerative means, because you're starting to see that in just, the general market, and people are probably like, well, what does that actually mean? Yeah,
We are seeing it, aren't we?
yeah.
Yeah, well, just to say a few words about organic, we're talking about organic farming, meaning free of chemical fertilizers, the use of compost, crop rotation, using organic agents, to enrich the soil, to continue to build up soil integrity, cover cropping, and so forth. But with regenerative organic farming, we have some premises, and the first one is building up the soil food web. And what that means is paying attention to the vast diversity of the microbiome of the soil so that our soils become alive again. And I really do mean that. Conventional agriculture, chemical agriculture has really, killed our soils. There's hardly any life in. So the big premise of regenerative farming is doing things that build up the microbiome of the soil. And one of the ways that we do that is through low-till or no-till farming. So the concept of keep your soils green instead of, brown,
Hmm.
is interesting because you always want to have a carpet of carbon on your soil in order to sequester the carbon in the atmosphere, and because plants need that carbon for their growth and development. And the other component of regenerative farming is, do what you need to do to build up nutrient density in your crops so that your foods, in my case, our herbs, become much more nutrient dense, and you get much more out of them when you consume them.
Yeah, and regenerative agriculture is definitely, hopefully it's a growing field, because I do start to see it a bit more. There's like a few companies I order some like meat from, like one of them was like Force of Nature. I don't know if you're familiar with the brand Force of Nature, but um, I'm just curious, like how much more expensive is it to have a regenerative farm versus just, industrial, like milling or,
Well,
farming?
I mentioned soil food web and the microbiome of the soil. We don't buy implements, or we don't buy fertilizers, so there's a big cost savings there.
Oh, okay.
We actually go out. This is what we do, Brian. We go out and go to the forest floor and harvest a little half-inch layer from the forest floor and bring it back, and bring large pickup trucks back, and then we add uh, rice semolina to it, and then we add molasses to it, and then we add some herbs to it like cinnamon and cloves and coffee grinds and or coffee hulls, and then we mix this up and then we ferment it in large vats,
Mm.
and we make our own microbiome, if you will. And from that base microbiome, we actually make our own organic fertilizers and our own pathogen controls. So we have a big cost savings. We do a lot of chipping of decaying material, and all the material after our harvest goes onto our beds instead of is removed from the farm so it can decay back into the soil and create more carbon. And I think, one of the things that people ask me, what do you get out of all of this? And I'll give you an example with turmeric. We noticed converting from organic to regenerative organic. We got our fields went from 15,000 kilos per hectare of yield to 80,000 kilos per hectare.
Wow.
And our crop went from about 2.5% curcuminoids to about 8.5%.
Mm.
So when you calculate that in terms of yield on both biomass and activity or nutrient density, and then the savings you have from making your own inputs, it's actually not more costly, but it's actually a savings to grow regeneratively.
Wow. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, I mean, we always talk about nutrient dense foods, and you go to the grocery store, you're buying fruits, vegetables, and hoping that you're going to get the nutrients that are actually in it. But how much do you think it gets stripped, like from just if you went to buy an apple, let's just say, or like an orange from a normal industrial farm versus a regenerative farm? Like, what would you say the difference is between that? I know you said it for turmeric, but I'm curious, like just like someone went and bought like an orange or something. What's the big difference there?
Yeah. Yeah, we collaborate a bit with Rodale, the Rodale Institute, and which is doing a lot of study on different food crops for with regenerative farming. And
Hmm.
you're seeing anywhere from 2 to 4 times increase of nutrient density with regenerative agriculture.
Wow.
And so those numbers, those are resulting from real research. And that's really meaningful when you're talking about your nutrients in an apple grown
Yeah.
organically or grown conventionally versus regeneratively.
Mm.
You know, getting 2 to 4 times more nutritious apple. I would eat that apple, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I'd pay more for that apple, which I'm sure. Do you find that since like you do regenerative farming, there can be a cost that's passed on, even though you said it might even be less expensive to do it regeneratively?
Yeah, I actually, the farm that I own and operate in Costa Rica is the sole supplier to my herbal products company, Kokora,
Hmm.
which is US. And we charge, even though I own both companies, this farm in Costa Rica charges Kokora a premium for the regenerative herbs.
Mm.
And I collaborate with two other regenerative farms in the US, and they too charge a premium, and I'm willing to pay it, because I know the value and I can extract the value from it.
Yeah, and your company Kokora was started after you launched years ago Gaia, which I think you sold that in 2019, or is that right?
Yeah, right at the end of 2019.
And how's Kokora been, and what are your sort of your goals with that company?
Yeah, so Kokora is founded on regenerative principles, and we can talk about that later. But the concept of Kokora was to leverage off of the kind of crops that I could grow in Costa Rica and bring regenerative herbs into regenerative products so people can benefit from all that we're talking about. And we started the company really started developing the narrative and the brand identity and demographics about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And really launched products into the marketplace in the natural food industry about, well, it was last October, and now we're approved to sell, and I think it's close to 600 stores in the natural
Mm.
product space, and we're on Amazon and we're selling on our website. So we've really made a lot of progress, and there's been great acknowledgement of what we've done, with the whole regenerative space.
Are there many other companies? Because I've had a few others on the podcast that do what you're doing with regenerative agriculture. Because you'll see organic, but there's obviously, I feel like regenerative is a step above.
Yeah, regenerative is a big step above. And in the product space, with herbal products, I think there's just a few companies who are using regenerative organic herbs. But what Kokora doing is really very special and very exciting because we're actually developing, those regenerative grown crops into products that are then certified as regenerative organic. So we have the Regenerative Organic Alliance seal right on our product.
Mm. And then, do you test your products just for to make sure that the purity of them and everything?
Every product, it's not, yeah. I mean, every product has to be tested for purity. What that means is we test for the total, uh, microbial, profile,
Hmm.
and for heavy metals. And so when I say microbial profile, that means the aerobic plate count, yeast mold, salmonella, E. coli, coliforms, and so forth. And but more importantly than the purity, we also, well, two other things. We also test for identity to be sure that the genus and species of the plant is accurate. That's
Hmm.
very important in the herbal world. And then when I sold Gaia Herbs, I started a institute at the naturopathic college that I went to in Arizona, which is now Sonoran University of Health Sciences, and we established the Institute for Botanical Research. So every product that Kokora makes is now tested for through bioassay cell line studies to show clinical efficacy and in vitro clinical efficacy. And so we are going above and beyond to test our products in ways that not only prove safety but also prove efficacy.
Mm.
And that's that your consumers want to know this. Is the product that I'm taking safe and efficacious? Does it work? And is it safe for me to take? And I think ever since I was at Gaia and now at Kokora, these are the questions that we continue to answer.
Hey everyone, quick interruption here. If you are looking to gain energy, lose inches around your waist, and build strength, well, look no further than my book, The Step Ladder System: 6 Steps to Lifelong Health and Vitality. What you get with the book is my full step by step plan and blueprint that I've worked with all my clients with, packed into one book. With part one, you're going to lay the foundation, tackle any common challenges that might come in your way. Part two is my 6 pillar blueprint: how to set yourself up with a solid plan and know exactly what to do when life throws any curveballs. And lastly, step three are learning to implementation, a plan for getting results over the next weeks and beyond. So there you have it. I'll leave a link in the show notes for my step ladder system book. Now back to the podcast. Yeah, and do you like, I mean, through all your years of being in the product space, but learning about herbs, like is there any like stories that you have, like things that maybe you've been impacted from your products or the herbs?
You mean in terms of benefits?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, in a good impacted in a good way.
Sure, yeah. Or someone, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be in practice and I saw over 10,000 people before I went into Gaia. I started Gaia and now Kokora. We get people all the time telling us how much energy they have, how much more mental clarity they have, and how they feel just more vital. I mean, and I'm really proud to say that, you know, we can really use Kokora now as an implement to connect plants and people in a way that lifts our environment up and potentially lifts the quality of well-being up. But there's so many people, Brian, that call us, that write us all the time and tell us how much benefit they're receiving.
Either do you have a favorite? Like I noticed I'm just looking at some of your products. Like for sleep, this is a topic that comes up a lot for us. I notice you guys have something to help with sleep. Is that a popular product?
Well, we haven't launched it yet. It's called Regenerative Sleep.
Okay.
And in that product, we are definitely using all the regenerative crops that we grow in Costa Rica. But the big ones are for sleep is it's largely passion flower and lemon balm. Those are two important sleep herbs. And I'm a real fan of those two herbs. And they really give the physiology a calm state and just, put you into a state of well, your nervous system into a parasympathetic state. And
Hmm.
yeah, and when you extract them from the way we do, they get really concentrated. So they bring very good results.
Mm.
But one of my favorites is two of my favorites is ashwagandha and turmeric. So many people are interested in ashwagandha these days, and gosh, we grow a lot of ashwagandha in Costa Rica, and we grow it well. We test every single field that we grow in Costa Rica for bioactivity, and so when it comes into a product, the product is really, really potent.
Is that one out? Is the Ashwagandha out yet? Um,
Ashwagandha, yeah, it's coming out next week.
oh, there you
Yeah,
go. Well, when
yeah,
when people hear the podcast, it'll be out. Uh,
yeah.
and what are
Yeah.
the properties for that as far as helping people with like, stress and stamina and things like that?
Yeah, so ashwagandha is one of your royal adaptogens, which means it helps you adapt to stressful situations. And interestingly enough, you talk about sleep. And for those people who have a stress physiology, ashwagandha can help sleep better. But on the other side of the coin, ashwagandha is well known for providing more energy in daytime activities. It's one of my favorites, and it can regulate the hormonal system, the adrenal system, the thyroid system,
Mm.
and it's just one of the great. I would say in Ayurveda, there's a term that is used for ashwagandha. It's called rasayana. And rasayana is a term that implies, rejuvenation.
Mm.
And ashwagandha is one of the classic Ayurvedic rasayanas for rejuvenation and longevity. So, who should take ashwagandha? You, me, our neighbors, our friends, pretty much anyone who's wanting to have good, stable adaptation and energy in their life.
And what was the other one you said you liked?
It was
One on?
turmeric.
Oh, turmeric.
Turmeric.
Is that one for sale?
That too is coming out.
Okay.
Both of these are coming out around June 4th. So yes,
Okay.
by the time this airs, yes, it'll be in the markets. And one of the nice things about these products, they're all triple concentrated. So we've proven how growing regeneratively concentrates the activity in the soil, and then we take it through two more layers of concentration. One is a liquid extraction, and then the next one is freeze drying that liquid into a powder, which concentrates two more layers of concentration. So the
Mm.
products are real potent and really vital and don't have excipients and really pure.
Yeah, I'll be looking for that. So that'll be out by the time we publish this podcast. I like to ask this question. You've been in the health space for a while now. Um, what's like one thing you've changed your mind on?
Whoa, can you?
You know, yeah, it could be nutrition based, it could be lifestyle based, it could be around products, or what's one thing that maybe you've changed your mind on over the last you know 30 years, or how you've been in the.
I have been in the industry a while, Brian, 35 years, and I don't know. I'm going to just maybe flip it a little and say I I have been right from the very beginning a real um, a real voice for adhering to the wisdom of nature. And meaning in everything we do with plants, we follow the guidance, the intelligence of nature. And I've never vacillated from that. And um, there were things that came up. I'll tell you a story where I how we changed perspectives on certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember in I don't know, it was many years ago, green coffee berry came into the industry,
I
and
think I
remember
remember that. Yeah.
wanting to take it for weight loss?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at the time, Gaia was considering launching a green coffee berry extract, and I was looking for ways to accommodate, and we couldn't find a way to do it with our set of principles and integrity. So I gathered the executive team together and I asked everybody, let's vote. And I said, is launching green coffee berry aligned to the values of our company? And we had 10 people go around and vote. Everyone voted no.
Hmm.
And that was the one thing that I remember clearly about how it changed our perspective and how, we show up and confront values and really, align to values, even if it causes us to change our perspective.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, and for you, just for you, like, there's one thing to like find products that are beneficial for individuals, but they actually build a company out of it. That's a whole nother big layer. And so, to your, I mean, that's a great appreciation of what you've been able to do with Gaia and now with Kokora. What's the biggest challenge that you run into when it comes to building a, company around, great products?
Always the first and foremost challenge is supply chain. Can you sustain the integrity of your raw materials as you grow a company out, can you continue to supply, your products with the same quality and integrity of raw materials that you started?
Mm.
And that's all, I have said that from day one in both Gaia and now Kokora. We need to focus on our supply chain, and that's why we have our own farms, and that's why we have partner farms in the US, because we want to do it right. We only do it right. And starting from regenerative crops is, in my mind right now, the highest and most, you know, um, loyal form of, making herbal products.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what would you say, like, other than the products, like, what's the big, well, I should say this, with the products, like, what benefits should people be looking for when it comes to the products? I know we talked about sleep, we talked about stress. Are there any other, maybe energy? Are there any other, like, if someone's, maybe struggling with, I know weight loss is a big thing and people want the magic pill. And I don't, I'm not one to say, one thing's going to do it, right? It's sort of a lifestyle that needs to encompass, losing weight. But are there any products that can maybe guide that person not along that journey?
Well, I think everybody's need states are different, right? Your need states are different than mine, and I think it's the question is, how in touch are we, with our need states? In my personal journey, I'm fortunate where I can, since I have the background that I have order and have my lab workup done on a quarterly basis. So I can identify what my need states are for my physiology pretty clearly,
Hmm.
kind of objectively, separate from what I'm feeling, and I look at it and then, all right, if my cholesterol's repeatedly up, I might want to take something that will lower my cholesterol on a regular basis, or, I could give a number of examples, but know your need states and
Right.
be in tune with your need states so that you can adjust. And there's a lot of great practitioners out there who can provide you with guidance on how to address it. But if you were to ask me, what can anyone do on a day-to-day basis in today's world to support their levels of stress and to help keep their immunity up. There are a few herbs products that I would go to for anyone, regardless of their need state.
Yeah. And we like to talk about routines. Are there any routines that you implement throughout your life in the morning? I know I'm gathering you're a fairly spiritual individual. Do you do certain things to help, like keep your lifestyle?
I do, Brian. I'm sure a lot of your listeners do, but for me, I my morning routine is this. I go up into my shala and I do some yogic postures for my low back, largely focusing on my low back. And then after that, I sit up and I have this Chinese technique of tapping, all over the body to clear stagnation.
Mm.
And then after I do my tapping, I do a breathing exercise called Uddiyana Bandha to help build my core breathing energy. And then after that, I do a set of about a 20-minute session of restorative meridian massage. And then after that, I do qigong, and then when all of that practice in the shala is done, I go into the sauna and do dry sauna and infrared sauna, alternating with cold plunge, and and then later in the afternoon, I do 50 laps of aqua jogging in my pool, and
Wow.
that's pretty much my daily focus on, of course, I'm eating well in the day, during the day,
Sure.
and I try to maintain that lifestyle for a healthy balance.
And you mentioned is it Abhyanga? Is that the practice? Abhyanga?
Uddiyana Bandha,
Yeah.
the breathing exercise.
Well, and I'm also looking. There's something called you wrote on your website, Abhyanga. It's a self oil massage using.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's an Ayurvedic massage. I don't do that every day. Some days I do that though, and it's done with warm sesame oil, full body to help. You know, we have these doshas in our body according to Ayurveda, and daily Abhyanga helps to, massaged in a proper way with warm sesame oil, helps to keep the doshas in a state of balance. So that's a good practice as well.
And I noticed maybe for people who want to sort of cut back on caffeine, do you have any products that could sort of help replace that?
Yes. Yes. Our functional powders, we have these beautiful powders that can be mixed in water, milk, smoothies, whatever, nut milk. But one of them is called roasted Kokora Lift. And roasted Kokora Lift is made with
Oh,
roasted dandelion, roasted chicory, and it has other herbs, adaptogenic herbs in it. And frankly, it tastes, startling like coffee taste.
really?
And it gives you all the benefits of having an adaptogenic drink without the problem of being overstimulated by so much caffeine.
Mm.
And I tell people if you're really a real coffee drinker and it's hard for you to get off of coffee, take roasted Kokora Lift, take 2 teaspoons and add a teaspoon of freeze-dried coffee into it or your favorite coffee, and then brew it like you would in a French press. That's how we make roasted Kokora Lift, and mix it all together, and then press it out and drink it, and you wouldn't know that it's not coffee,
Mm.
but it would have such an amazing adaptogenic benefit and immune supporting benefit to your body and mind.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and that's called roasted Kokora. I'm looking at it right now. Um, and that's something that if you just took on its own, you would just mix it with water.
Yep, hot water and put it in a French press and press it out and enjoy it. It tastes great.
Mm.
You can add, we don't add any sweetener to our powders and leave it for everyone to add their own, but you could add a little sweetener of your choice if you want, but it's not necessary.
Okay. Well, yeah, and it looks like you got a lot of products coming out as we speak. So that's exciting. And where's the best place for people to learn about you and your products?
So I suppose, I love doing these podcasts with folks like yourself, and we hope to publish a lot of our podcasts on our website. We have great blogs on our website, and people can go to kokoralife.com. That's our website, and learn a lot about regenerative agriculture, regenerative life, regenerative products. And of course, find us on Amazon now. We have a beautiful Amazon brand page, and so yeah, and our products are growing in an ever increasing number of health food stores. So hopefully we'll be a name well recognized very soon.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, we'll definitely put links in the show notes for people to learn about Kokora. And I will say this, Rick, I try not to have a lot of products on my podcast, but when I was reading about Kokora and the regenerative organic certified farms in Costa Rica, I thought this would be a worthwhile episode for people to learn about your company. So I appreciate
Yeah,
your company and the benefits it can help people with.
yeah.
So
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate all that you're doing to share knowledge and wisdom with all your listeners. It's a great thing.
excellent. Well, enjoy your day, and thanks for coming on, Rick. And we'll be in touch down the road.
All right, Brian. Thank you again.
Thanks for listening to the show. I know there's thousands of podcasts out there, and you chose to listen to mine. I will put a link in the show notes if you want to connect with my guest. And if you are looking for one-on-one consulting with me, I will put a free 15-minute link so you can set up a call to see if you're fit for my 6-month health breakthrough program. So thanks again. Feel free to rate and subscribe. I would love that to help support the podcast. And till next time, have a great rest of the day, and I will see you on my next podcast. Thanks so much.